How I view the world today, I'd have to say complicated. Um, yeah, we live in a society that's entirely constructed by our race. We've not evolved to live in the environment around us, but we've also created a new one, which is really strange. Um, and it's just weird to think that we're just animals on a rock in space. But there's so much more than that. It's just hard to wrap your head around everything because you've got so many things going on with the current political climate, the current economy, the current pandemic. Everything can get really overwhelming sometimes. So, yeah, I'd say I see the world today as complicated.
So, my perception of the world that we live in today is that is quite daunting, but also limitless, which I think is quite hard to explain. Um, but kind of the limitless side of it is that there is so much potential and so much possibility um, and that as a generation and during my lifetime that can be achieved and that will be achieved. Um, is quite cool to know because it is ever changing and constant. But the daunting side of it is that there's a lot of talk about things that need to be changed, and things like climate change, and also the fact that we're still stuck in ways that should have been changed a long time ago. Um, if you think about in the past year with all the Black Lives Matter movement, um, still the stigma surrounding mental health, for example, there are still so many things that need to be changed that aren't being changed, which is quite daunting because you'd think we'd have done it by now.
My perspective of the world has really changed and developed, throughout my life. I think, especially with my diagnosis of OCD, it has definitely played its part in, you know, shaping the way that I see the world today. I think that at the moment, I'm definitely gonna go with terrifying being the way that I perceive the world. I'm thinking, you know, globally there's so much going on. There's, war, there's the pandemic, there's protests, all that sort of thing, and that's only for like equal rights. But then you've got all of this going on personally, especially with young people, with 16, 17, 18, and we're trying to figure out what we want to do with our lives. So, yeah, I think terrifying is how I would say I view the world.
I'm not sure what my perspective on the world is. There are some great days when I get to try new things or spend time with my friends, but more and more, I just feel like there's an overwhelming amount of things that are wrong with the world. Racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, not even mentioning the global pandemic. Even if we imagined coronavirus and the Black Lives Matter movement did not happen, we started this year with Australia burning and Kobe Bryant dying, and now, 9 months in, we have explosions in Lebanon, Gaza bombings, and Chadwick Boseman dying. With so much negativity being reported, it's getting hard to focus on the small daily good things and easier to catch activism burnout. While this doesn't mean that I have a negative perspective on the world, I think it takes much more work than it should to keep a positive one.
So kind of like I touched base on in my first part of the video, um, what I definitely found most challenging is the fact that there is so much that needs to be changed. Um, it can be quite hard to focus on what matters most to you as a person because there's no way that I can focus on everything that I want to be changed, and there's no way I can tackle it all. Um, from like climate change to Black Lives Matter to mental health stigma to all the things out there that need to be different. Um, and I find it quite challenging to actually focus on one and also to kind of maybe get the point across because sometimes if you try and talk about it or explain it or say why you're passionate about it, people quite shut you down because it's not the matter that's most important to them. And I think that's the problem in the world. Everyone thinks their matter is most important, and it's not. So we need to learn to focus on everyone and take everyone into consideration. And I think that comes in our daily lives as well as looking at things in the bigger scheme of the world, because everyone's quite self-centered these days, I think.
I think that one of the things I find most challenging about the world today is the pressure that we put on young people. Especially with things like external exams, GCSEs and A-levels. You're here at the age of 16, 18, feeling like the results that you get are going to establish what you can do for the rest of your life. They're going to make or break the things that you want to spend your life doing. And I think, on top of all that, you've got to figure out what you want to do with your life, and you need to be able to, have a job and look after your parents and get along with your siblings, all this sort of thing. I feel like the pressure on young children in today's, world is a lot for them to take.
I find it challenging to keep a steady personal drive. I'm most motivated by deadlines when I'm at low points, but when I'm feeling good about myself and my mental health, I tend to be more organized and driven, even in most stressful and boring conditions. The issue is that in the past, I linked my personal feeling of self-worth to my work and achievements. So while I'm trying to unlearn that pattern, I often slip and find myself trapped in a toxic cycle of don't feel good enough or motivated enough to do my best, so I don't do any work. And because I have no work done and nothing achieved, I feel worse and don't want to work further. And that cycle has previously been really hard to break. Another thing I find challenging is asking for help in any area of life. Pride can be a huge challenge for me to deal with when I keep thinking that I should be able to be self-reliant and help others while knowing that I need help myself. Especially asking for help to break the toxic cycle of depending on progress and success to have a good mental health. So yeah, dealing with my own self can be the most challenging thing I have to do. Unless it's algebraic quadratics. They definitely trump the other stuff.
There are so many things that I find difficult about living in the world today. There are many things that most people find difficult. Having different political beliefs to what's in power, having to worry about money and what you're going to do after university and getting a job, and it's all very concerning. But I'd say the most difficult thing for me is probably living in the margins, I guess. I mean, I'm AFAB, non-binary, gay, with mental health conditions, autism. I really know how to pick them. And it can be kind of difficult to challenge people's perspectives because that's what I'm seen as. I'm not seen as like a person. I'm often seen as a difficulty or something that people don't necessarily believe can exist, which is a challenge. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge.